Hello, Nest family. Great to be with you near the end of the year for what might be our final episode of 2024, more than likely. Daniel Garb here with you alongside Drew Jones to talk all things draft and everything else around the Eagles. And Drewy, if you just listen really closely, just think you might be able to hear just a bit of just some tumbleweeds in the distance. It's been a week since the draft, but a lot of those angry Eagles social media accounts were very quiet on draft night and second night, and they're just fading away in the distance. But if you listen really closely, Drew, you can hear the silence from some of those angry Eagles fans.
It's a serious change of tune, isn't it? It's best way to answer your critics, I suppose, is to nail it. And West Coast certainly did that on draft night. If you listen really closely, you might be able to hear my French Bulldogs, Dennis and Raymond, breathing loudly in the background. Sorry, the audio quality won't be as good today. I'm just working from home, I guess, as they say. I don't have my equipment with me. But, yeah, geez, it really was a good couple of days for West Coast.
It was.
As soon as Richmond sort of passed on Bo Allen and that sort of opened up for us, that was just such an amazing start. And then it just feels like we just kind of nailed every pick and made every post a winner. What was your feeling watching the draft?
Exactly that. And I don't want to have a go at Eagles fans, but there was so much furor after the trade period. And then, scouring social media, it was like, hang on, it's very quiet. And there was a lot of joy among some of the supporters, but some of those people who had been so angry didn't have much to say. I mean, there are some fans who I think were angry. They actually couldn't be angry, legitimately. Some get into that mode sometimes. But it was that kind of draft for the Eagles where you couldn't really have a crack. And we don't know what's going to happen in the future, and time will tell. We can't sit there after the trade period and say, well, how can you be angry about this because it hasn't played out yet? And then sit there in the draft a couple of weeks later or whatever, a month later, and say, well, you're all wrong because this is amazing. No, we have to see how it plays out. But in terms of what we've done at this point in time, it feels like we've landed the group of players that are exactly what we need. And the Bo Allen situation was brilliant. Yes, I don't think any of the phantom drafts took into account the fact that Richmond would take a couple of punts because they had so many picks. They took Taj Hodden and they went in the key forward early, which meant that Bo was there for us, which is an awesome result. And then it feels like we got Job Shanahan late, considering he played 4 VFL games and kicked 11 goals. Tommy Gross looks like a find. He slid as well. Davis, all right, went late too. But the one I reckon is going to be a cult hero, Drewy, for Eagles fans, if he's not already, which I think he is amongst many, is the boy Luca Greco. Because didn't he make a splash yesterday in his press conference?
What a name as well, Luca Grego. Like, it's got this cult hero written all over him.
Did you watch his presser?
Yeah, great story. Liked his energy. Like, he just seems like so down to earth, sort of cheeky. And, yeah, as far as the hanging out with Cam Smith and Cooper Cronk, Billy Slater, Craig Bellamy, through his dad working at the Storm, it feels like he's got a pretty good pedigree. And was the direct quote, maybe not verbatim, I like hitting people or I love hitting people?
Yeah, through his rugby
like
league days.
Yeah.
And there's more to it than that. I mean, that's the footy side of things and from his highlights. I mean, all players look good in their highlights. We thought Kobe Bergel, I know he's had injury issues, but we were raving about his highlights. It hasn't quite worked out. Everyone looks good on their highlights. But, he looks like a smart, calm defender. And then that comes through in the way that he speaks as well, like way above his years. And then it's not just the rugby league stuff, which obviously bodes well in terms of his toughness, but, the fact that he loves four-wheel driving and he can't wait, he's only 18 years of age or whatever, to get out to the outback of WA and go four-wheel driving. He wears the chains around his neck as well. I saw in some of his photos. He's quirky and he's different, but he speaks so well and he feels like a leader already, which is a bizarre thing to say about a draftee. But the amount of messages I got yesterday from Eagles fans going, how good's this kid? It's refreshing.
I think the fact that he appears to be so comfortable with who he is.
Exactly. Well said.
Happy to talk about his his background, his family, and also he's like, yeah, I want to go to the Kimberley and go full driving and hit the beaches. And that to me is a really great sign. He's comfortable in his skin, and I guess that lends itself to being he's going to settle quickly. He's probably not going to be phased. He's not going to be overawed. He's not going to be phased by too much. Take it all in his stride, and he's comfortable with who he is. So I think, yeah, cult hero, absolutely. Thanks for sending through that text, because I was able to get my head around his presser and thoroughly enjoyed it. And I think, to be honest, I think all of the young players coming in at West Coast seem to have made a pretty good impression. But just on Bo Allen, we talk about him sliding. It's not a surprise that Richmond took a key tall. But I guess Taj Houghton was maybe the slight surprise, and understandable given he had been sort of touted as a top 5 pick before he did his ACL. They were willing to take a punt on him, and then obviously just Bo falls to us. But do you think in West Coast, Matty Clark and everyone working in the recruiting and list managing, in their wildest dreams, do you think they really believed that they would get Bo Allen with that pick?
I think they thought it was a possibility, but in the video afterwards, Gavin Bell looks at Bo Allen and says, "We didn't think you'd be there. We thought you'd have gone out." The cynic might say you can see the camera there and he's playing up to it, but it seemed pretty authentic to me. So I think they thought he was gone, and then there'd be one of maybe Lindsay, but unlikely, probably a Houghton or Murphy Reid that we would have taken. And I think they were delighted, obviously, that Bo was there. And then the same with Shanahan. I mean, do we need another key forward? Probably not. He can play back as well, and we do need some reinforcements there. But with obviously Oscar and Jake and Jack Williams and Archer Reid coming through, we don't need one. But it was just a situation where even people who just observed the draft went, hang on, you've got to take this kid now. And the thing I love about our first 2 picks, Bo Allen and Jobe Shanahan, is they've got senior footy experience. Bo Allen plays in a flag for Peel and plays virtually the second half of the season. Jobe Shanahan plays 4 games for Essendon and kicks 11 goals in the VFL as a teenage key forward. That is so encouraging.
Yeah, well, I think it got to the point with Shanahan where we just had to take him. And McQualter said going into the draft that we would take the best players available. Whether or not they truly meant that, we'll never know. But on the evidence of what we saw, he was talked about as top 12 to 15 potentially. So, like if Richmond had taken him as their sort of early-ish key tall, that wouldn't have shocked anyone. The fact that he slid so far, and even past North Melbourne, who traded back into the first round to take one of the Whitlocks. It's just amazing that he ended up going to us. And there was talk about Essendon trying to trade in to the start of the second round to grab him, but none of that eventuated. So it was meant to be for us, and it's a great result. And the fact that you mentioned the VFL experience with 11 goals, he's talked about how he played with Peter Wright and learnt some stuff about positioning from him. So he seems like he's had a really good, junior football introduction into AFL life. So that's exciting for us. Tommy Gross, I don't know a lot about, except for the fact that it was projected to go a lot higher. And even the Fox Sports Lab had Hamish Davis ranked in the 30s, I think, and we grabbed him much later in the 60s. So, yeah, it seems like we've been able to get good value for our picks right across the board. And I just think the Bo Allen thing makes such a difference for us when we talk about, the vibe and the mood around the club. Like getting the WA boy later than we thought in what we think is a steal, that's just a vibe lifter, and it takes the pressure off that pick swap. But we probably wanted Bo Allen, and we probably didn't want to take him with pick 3, but felt the pressure of, well, if we take Jagger Smith or if we take Finn O'Sullivan, is he going to ask to go home? All that pressure comes off, and yet we still get him even though we traded back. So I just think there's always a bit of luck involved, but maybe we're due some luck with the draft, with some picks that haven't panned out in recent years. So I just think great result. And I don't think apart from that recent draft where we got Oscar Allen, where we got Liam Ryan, like that left me feeling really comfortable and confident about the list. And I have a similar feeling, although slightly different because we're not building towards a premiership, but we're building something, and it gives me great optimism.
For sure. And look, you could make an argument as well that Beau Allen, in terms of what our midfield needs right now, is not the perfect player. Like perhaps we needed a Xavier Lindsay or a Finn O'Sullivan or a Jagger Smith right now, that pure midfielder, accumulator, playmaker, to work off Harley Reid and Hewitt, etc. But the big body, the experience he's got, the WA aspect, of course, you just had to take him. And he can slot into the midfield, of course. He said that, he's played a bit more back, but a bit of midfield. You can see him working through there. Jinby probably stays more back than midfield, but Hewitt coming through, he probably complements them with that big body, which will be nice. So we can still add another kind of midfielder in the future. Who's to say we won't get a top 5 pick next year, and then we bring in that kind of player straight away. So it was just a no-brainer in the end. Gross looks tough. I mean, he might be a surprise. He might come in and impress straight away because he's got this hardness. And what I loved about him is how he's got a lot of family in Perth. So he was just so enthused to get over to WA, like lots of cousins, and I think he said grandparents as well. So he's well set up in that sense. Also, through the draft, you could see what the Eagles were thinking about the makeup of our list. So we got rid of, obviously, the likes of Jermaine Jones and Josh Rotham and Alex Witherden and a lot of players in that mid-range who weren't quite doing what we hoped they would do. And then brought in, obviously, players who are improvements on that in Baker and Graham and Owies, and then bring in the kids. So you fill that gap a little bit of sort of 26, 27-year-olds and probably enhance that age bracket in terms of standard. And now you've brought in 5 kids to really energise and set yourself up for the future. You could see what the method was in terms of their delistings now and the plan going into the draft.
Yeah, I'm with you. And I think the fact that we've got Grego, who said he played sort of a bit down back and can roll up through the midfield, and then Tom Gross forward, but can also play midfield. Like, you don't want to just draft guys who have come through as midfielders. You want guys who can actually play in a position. Like Tom Gross is not going to get into the team next season as a midfielder, but he could get in playing half forward. Grego can get in playing half back. Beau Allen is going to start his career as a defender. And then so with Witherden going out, with Rotham going out, Jimmy playing full-time back, you can see, okay, so there is space for Allen to start off his career as a defender, whether it's lockdown or rebounding or a bit of both, but, all the options are open to us. So there's flexibility there with Duggan. He can play halfback or through the mids, and Baker. So, yeah, I really like how McQualter said, we're building from the back. Baker's a part of that. And, obviously we've got a lot of experienced premiership players playing in that back 6 and some new blood as well. So I'm liking the look of it. I know we're going to get to our best 23s a bit later on, but it was actually fun putting it together and pretty exciting. So I think coming out of the draft, the naysayers and the knockers, particularly around that trading back from 3, we definitely silenced the doubters. And I think the general consensus from people who follow the draft closely is that the Eagles had a really, really good couple of days.
And it's all going to play out. But you look at it now and you think, well, it's a net win at the moment, as you said last time. The trade back from 3 to 12 with Allen, Owies, Baker, and pick 45, remember, which we got as part of it because we were able to do that trade with Port. How is that not a net win as it stands right now? It has to be, surely.
No, the trade looks way better now. Yeah. So just backing over that, do you think that Port Adelaide traded ahead of us by 1 pick because we refused to guarantee that we weren't going to draft the player that they wanted?
No, I think it was all to do with Freo. I think both Freo and Port wanted Joe Berry badly. And I think we played them off each other. And so I think we said, we'll trade up with whoever's willing to do that pick with us. And Port said, well, we'll do it to guarantee Joe Berry, to ensure that Freo doesn't take him. That was the plan.
So was there an offer from Freo to West Coast to trade ahead?
Who knows what happened? Who knows if we played a bluff or whatnot?
That's the only way it makes sense is if Freo had offered us a trade, say we want to jump ahead of you and grab Berry.
Yep.
And then we called Port and said, do you want Berry still? Because if you want him, like Freo are offering us pick, they're offering to trade up. So get in now instead of Freo getting him. So that does make sense. And then it earns us a bonus pick, which was really handy for us. So I think the fact we were able to grab the extra player this year makes such a massive difference given the depth. And we talked about trading back in, but we were talking about trading back into the first round. We've traded back in the 40s and we've still got a really good prospect. So that just tells you everything you need to know, really.
Yeah, exciting times. Lots to play out, but everything across the preseason looks, really encouraging. I'm hearing words that, the players are loving Andrew McWalter. That more about it being just getting really stale last year under Simo. The players all got along and all that, but just the messaging got really stale. And some of the words I'm hearing is that they're loving it. They're loving what Mini's providing so far. We're already seeing snippets, but it looks really energized. The messaging looks really clear. It looks new and, it feels like they're confident about the direction they're heading in, which is great. And when you look at our best 23, which we'll get onto in a moment, then, there's injuries to come, of course. There always will be. But it's exciting. The Chad Warner story rumbles on. So there are reports out of Perth that, he was with West Coast officials on the weekend. I can tell you that is true, Drew, from what I've heard. So he spent time, and they were pretty much confirmed in Perth media anyway, but he spent time with West Coast officials on the weekend, golf with a couple of them, which may have been Don Pike and Kieran Jack. The race for the Chad is on. Sydney, Freo, West Coast. But we are playing an aggressive hand early.
Yeah, fair enough. I think we forecast that in terms of the Chad Warner sweepstakes, like we're front of the queue, and the likelihood is that he's coming home, and it's going to be sooner rather than later. Like we're stocked and ready to go. And look, honestly, hearing that makes me really happy.
Yeah,
that he's playing golf with Don. The fact that John Longmire has now departed the Swans, like you would think that's probably a positive for West Coast. If we're weighing things up, I imagine the relationship between Horse and Chad Warner would have been quite strong. When you move into state, young man, the coach could probably become something of a father figure. So maybe the fact that Longmire has moved on might also tip things in our favour. Not that I think that Horse was going to go on beyond next season anyway. But if we're talking about the way the arrows are trending, it's upwards in terms of Warner to West Coast.
Yeah, look, Sydney is still a big chance. I don't think we can sit there and say they're not. I mean, I always think in these situations, the club that has the player at that stage is always in play in a big way because they're the current employer. They're in their backyard. But the premiership will come into it in a big way if they win it this season. I think he walks. If they don't, maybe you think, you get the peer pressure of some of his good mates there. Come on, mate, sign a short-term deal. Let's go again. We're not far off. Maybe he has a good relationship with Dean Cox. You can't write Sydney off considering all of that. And nor Freo. I mean, they're closer to a flag as it stands than us. Anthony Morabito's brother is his agent. He's an East Freo boy. But we've got more salary cap spend and we've got the better draft ammunition. So we're in it. But I think I'd say at the moment my feeling is Freo may be just ahead of us because of their position, but not by much. And then Sydney, but it's pretty close as they come around the turn for mine.
Any chance tell me if there's a possibility that this plays out. Fremantle move on from Justin Longmuir and hire John Longmire. And Chad Warner goes to Fremantle and follows John. Like what percentage chance is that?
About 7%. I can't see John
7%.
Longmire moving to Perth in 2024.
Well, I've got West Coast ahead.
Okay.
I've got West Coast as the favourites. I've got Freo 2. I've got Sydney 3.
Fair enough. I think it's pretty line ball between West Coast and Freo for mine, just because of their list position. And if he doesn't win it at Sydney, he thinks, well, hang on. this is the chance to win the flag. Like Freo could jump up next year and be around the top 4, and that could make a big difference. But we got the draft picks and we've got more salary cap to spend, so that'll come into it in a big way too. Who knows?
What if Freo beats Sydney in the grand final next year?
Yeah, well then they've got the flag, and he thinks, well,
then where does he go?
Yeah, God, who knows? But it's very exciting, the prospect of him in our midfield. But let's go through our best 23s, because as it stands, it's a pretty exciting lineup anyway. How do you want to do this? You want me to go through mine, then you go through yours?
Let's go line by line.
Okay.
You go
okay,
first.
We'll go to
back.
So the back 6 first, and then through the midfield?
Yeah, go.
Okay. So my back 6 as it stands is Brady Hoff, Harry Edwards, Tommy Cole, and then across halfback, Liam Baker, the Gov, and the boy Ruben.
Yep. So I've got Jimby, Edwards, Hoff, Baker, McGovern, Duggan.
Okay.
Go.
So then in the midfield, I've got Duggan on a wing. I've got Hunt on a wing. Tim Kelly in the midfield. Yohan Reid on ball. I'm going Matty Flynn as my first ruck as it stands.
Yeah.
Tough call. That's one I wrestled with. But I'm giving it to the recruit, new coach, the genuine ruckman, just to win over Mini and get first ruck honours.
Yep. Yes, I've got Hunt on the wing. The second wing for me is a bit unknown, because I think if they wanted to continue with the Ryan Marrick experiment on the wing, they could. At the moment, I've got Tom Cole playing as like a defensive wingman, a la like Camden McIntosh.
Sure.
And I'm interested in your Duggan placement on the wing. Like, do you see that as realistic, or are you sticking him there just because he'll switch between sort of defence and midfield and around the mark?
It's switched. So like he played a little bit there towards the end of last season, sort of started on a wing and then would, go on ball and switch with people. So, I've got Tommy Cole back pocket. You got Cole on the wing. They could easily switch. He could switch with a Jack Graham, for example, at times. It's just kind of the starting position more so than a nailed on winger like, say, Hunt might be on the other side.
Yeah, and I've got, at the moment, I've got Big Bad Bustling as our number one ruck, with Reid and Yo on ball. Kelly, I've got starting in the centre square, but I'm also open to the idea of him being half forward and having like Hewitt or Graham or, whatever. I'm open to other things. Sure. But at the moment, I've got Kelly in it.
My half forward line is Liam Flying Ryan, Jakey Waterman at centre half forward, Jack Graham on a half forward flank, then Matt Owies in a forward pocket, Oscar and Jamie Cripps in a forward pocket, who I think, with Graham coming in and Owies coming in, maybe he starts to play a little bit closer to goal as he gets older, rather than working up the ground like he has. Maybe that's a slightly modified role for Jamie Cripps. But, Ryan, Waterman, Graham, half forward flank, and then Owies, Allen, Cripps, full forward line.
Yeah, same 5, except I've got Elijah Hewitt and not Graham.
Okay.
So I've got Hewitt on a half forward flank at this stage.
My interchange, this is when it gets interesting, the players you've included and the ones you've just left out. So my interchange is Jack Williams. I don't feel confident about this, but I've left Bailey Williams out altogether. I've gone Jack Williams as the second ruck forward, which he played so well last season. Elijah Hewitt, Ryan Marrick, Bo Allen, and Noah Long. And then one of them ends up being the sub. I don't know, it could be Noah Long at this stage. But, Jack Williams, Hewitt, Bo Allen, Marrick, and Noah Long is my interchange.
Yeah, I've got big boy Bo. I wrestled with him even starting in the back 6, but then I was like, the 6 that I've got there looks so solid. So Bo, then Jack Graham. So in this circumstance, he's switching into the midfield off the bench. Yep. He's not messing around a high half forward. Jack Williams, same role for me, second ruck and forward. Noah Long, who I'm really excited about seeing this year. And my sub is Harvey Johnston.
Interesting. So you've left out
Ryan Marrick.
You've left out Marek, and I've got Marek as on the bench just as because we're hearing that he's doing a bit of work down back. Maybe he's sort of a back option for us. He can go back there. My sub would be, I guess, Noah Long from those players I've picked: Hewitt, Allen, Marek, Williams, the bench, Noah Long, the sub. So it's much the same. I don't think there's anyone. Marek's the only one in my 23, and Flynn that's not in yours. And you've gone for Bailey Williams, and who's the one you've put in for Marek?
Harvey Johnston, who you love.
Yeah, I love Johnston. So I felt bad leaving him out. So my emergencies, I mean, it's not really emergencies, but the rest are like Chesser, Bailey Williams, obviously. And it would not surprise me if Bailey Williams is in, and I would not be bothered by that one bit. Tyler Brockman, he's going to be an interesting one. He could work his way in potentially on talent. And then Harvey Johnston there as well. And then you're looking at players like Bazo and Dewar and Petrocelli. Who knows what McWalter will think of him. Jack Hutchinson, I've seen in a couple of predicted 23s for the Eagles. Hutch has been in there. I don't see it quite at the moment, but, who knows? He's a bit of a wild card player for us. And there's still guys like Tom Sheed. Who knows what McWalter will have planned for him coming into the season. But, the likes of Chesser and Brockman especially and Harvey Johnston, I could see all three of them potentially in the best 23 come the start of the season, but I've left them out. Who are some of the names you've left out that you think could be right on the mark?
Yeah, so Brockman, I'm still excited about, but I just think, we've got to be patient and give him a bit of time. But, ultimately, do we expect Liam Ryan to play 23 games this season? Probably not. Maybe Cripps, getting, well and truly into the back nine of his career, so there's no guarantee we're going to see him every week. So there's certainly a spot there for Brockman pretty quickly and easily in the forward line if the position opens up. I'd love to see Chester play half back at Waffle Eagles for a while and see how that looks, or whether they just want to play him, as a pure inside mid and try to get him to develop more craft in that way. And then Flynn or Williams, honestly, I don't really mind. I think it's a good thing to have, genuine competition for that number one ruck spot.
Yeah.
But I don't see any reason why we need to play both. But there's so many guys who want to have in the team and get experience and build up their games played. I don't think, unless it really calls for it, I don't think we need to have two number one rucks in there. So, Hutchinson's interesting. Like, could he play that second wing? Could they get a bit funky with him? Like, maybe, I like the idea of experimenting with him in a team. I did like the look of him late in the year. But, who knows how many he's going to see him going forward. But yeah, there's a lot of spots there. Petrocelli, again, I thought he looked best last season when he played as a midfielder. But I just think there's better options in that position than Petrocelli at this stage. So, yeah, we'll wait and see.
Yeah, so some of the interesting talking points are, I think the ruck battle, that's going to be one we're going to watch closely. Who gets the nod, Flynn or Bailey Williams? And it feels like Jack Williams is the backup because, of his ability to play and his forward craft, play second ruck forward. Bailey Williams can potentially do that as well. So that'll be interesting. And then I think the key backup. So all things being equal, yes, it's Edwards and McGovern. But then who gets the nod as next in line? They're trying to work on Marek. Maybe he blossoms in that role. Bazo is obviously a prospect. We think he's got talent. There's a guy called Cal Jamison who looked really good at the start of last season, didn't he, playing key back? So he's there as well. But I wonder, Drewy, is there a chance this season at some stage if you get a couple injuries or the key forwards like Archer Reed or Shanahan come on really quickly or Jack Williams goes to another level, that Oscar Allen plays some key back next season?
No, that's interesting. I feel like because of the year that he had a couple of years ago now, coming back off the injury where he kicked so many goals, and then maybe the knee stuff has sort of made me feel like, he's just a key forward. You're not going to risk him with the knee down back. But maybe I'm being too narrow-minded. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's more just in the case of emergency, like touch wood, God forbid doesn't happen, like a McGovern injury or something like that. One of the, Jack Williams or Archer Reed or Shanahan just show amazing signs. Bazzo's not quite ready, or we're not sure about Jamison, and we're just short of options there. We may pick up someone in the preseason that they've spoken about, an experienced player, but maybe it's just Oscar going back there to do a job. I could see that happening. I don't think it's out of the question, as much as we froth over, understandably, a Jake Waterman, Oscar Allen duo up forward.
Yeah, I like Jack Williams as a possibility to throw down back, but I think then it makes it a little harder for him to be the ruckman.
Yeah.
Like going from back into ruck, to me, that seems like a really tough role to throw on a young player, or any player for that matter. So, yeah.
Shanahan can play back. He did play there in his junior footy.
And he
might be moulded there early on just to learn the craft.
He said in his press conference that he's probably played more footy as a forward, but thinks he's played his best footy as a back, which is interesting. And, him developing, and if he develops quickly into a decent backman, that probably would be a really good result for us. As much as, the VFL highlights are pretty exciting. The way that I think Shifter on the draft coverage talked about how he gets great hang time, like when he jumps for the footy, like he stays up there and clunks marks, which is like a pretty exciting thing in a key forward.
Most certainly. Malachi Champion, we didn't mention either. Nice that we got him. Yeah, he's the kind of player that could come in and just be an excitement machine early on, and you just throw him in because of his pace and electricity and, what he might provide. That he could be a bolter potentially. Any other bolters that you think might be able to come through and just prompt Andrew McWalter to throw them in earlier than any of us thought?
Yeah, I'm really excited to see that there's always one.
Yeah. There's
always one. I wonder, like, if Tom Gross has a really good preseason, like, will he get an early shot maybe as a sub or something like that? I think we shouldn't discount Tyrell Dewar.
Yeah, your boy.
Yes. I don't think we should discount him as being not too far off the team, because I think using him explosively off the halfback flank or as a sub, or as another dangerous forward for us, I'm sure they'll love the look of that. And when you think about some of the players that McWalter worked with at Richmond, he may well want to have that explosiveness in the front half. That might be something that he thinks is key to his game plan. So you never know. We might see him early in the season as well.
So at this very early stage, and we'll work through preseason in the new year and a couple of preseason games and how we're looking. But at this stage, how many games do you think the West Coast Eagles will win next season? What should we be expecting?
I think if our senior players are fit, then we could win between 6 to 8.
Yeah, I'm with you there. That's my prediction as well. We won 5 last season and we should be a lot better. So I'm thinking that 6 to 8 range as well, which would be great.
Yeah, I think, but we've talked about this before. If we win 5 games again, but most of the games we lose by 25 points or less, or 30 points or less, then that's still going to be a great season, because it's the consistent competitiveness that's what we're looking for. Like, I want to be able to watch West Coast play and at 3/4 time still think we're a chance to win.
Yeah. What did you make of the draw? When you're a team that's bottom 4, you look and you see losses everywhere, but we had a couple of surprises early on last season. What did you make of our draw and how you think that might impact our win-loss ratio?
To be honest, I don't have too many thoughts on the draw. Do you?
I mean, I like Gold Coast round 1. They would have come off opening round, so they'll have that first game under their belt. But, we seem to often play them early in the season. But it's one we could get. We got some tough games early, though. So Brisbane away, Freo early. I mean, that's always going to happen. Giants away. Carlton in gather round is good because we get a top 8 side on a neutral venue. That worked for us last season. Even though we lost to Sydney, it was a bit of an accelerator for us. We got the Swans on neutral turf. We played well. We were with them a lot. We got some confidence from that. So I like that. Then we got Essendon at home after that. Hawthorn away, but then Melbourne at home, then Richmond away. There's a chance there early on to get maybe 3 or so wins in the first kind of 8-9 rounds, which would be a decent or so spot.
Yeah, so Gold Coast round 1 is winnable. And then the next 3 are tough.
Yeah.
As you mentioned, GWS away, Brisbane away, Freo, Carlton, we're a better chance of beating at Adelaide Oval than we would be in Melbourne. Then Essendon, I feel like they're beatable. Hawthorn away is tough. Melbourne at home is winnable. Richmond away, winnable. St Kilda, winnable. Adelaide, who the hell knows? But obviously we've struggled going over to Adelaide recently. North Melbourne away, but that's actually a home game.
Yeah, we can win that. And then Carlton at home.
In Bunbury. Yeah, so, yeah.
We'll have 3 games in a row in WA. So it'll be Geelong at home, North Melbourne in Bunbury, and then Carlton at home. The North game would back ourselves, and maybe we can beat one of Geelong or Carlton considering there'll be no travel.
Yeah.
You just don't know what's going to happen, of course, but there's some things to pick out there that might work in our favour. And I think a lot of Eagles fans are feeling we won 5 last season. 6 minimum is the expectation, but if we can get around 8, give or take 1 either side, it'd be an improved season under Andrew McWalter. So there's been plenty there to go through, Drewy. It's been fun. Any final thoughts you want to share with about a month to go until the new year?
Yes, I do, because round 24, West Coast are playing Sydney, so we can officially welcome Chad Warner into the nest with our last home game of the year.
Fantastic. Wouldn't that be great? Wouldn't that be great? Exciting times, Drewy. Nice to chat, mate. All the best over the Christmas, New Year period. The same to all of the Nest family. Share with us all of your thoughts. I doubt we'll do another one before the end of the year, but you never do know. Maybe there'll be a reason to have another chat. But let's talk on Twitter. Let's go through everything. Anything you want to share, let's have a chat on there. And let's keep the good vibes around the Eagles going.
Thanks, Garby. Good to chat, mate.